Hello and welcome to World Unity Week. I believe this is day 6, so we're coming right on in. And so all week long, we've been talking about superorganisms and teaming and how we can create conditions conducive to life with these deep patterns from other superorganism species like ants and honeybees. And we are organized like that. We like to be organized like that. So today we're going to talk about just the straight up business organization work that I do typically with companies. We've kind of focused more on the full picture, but companies are generally interested in that organizational piece. So we're going to focus on that, and then we'll bring it on home. Hey, what kind of animal are we? That's my son, by the way. And I don't know what kind of animal he is, but that's really been the focus of my work, is trying to understand what kind of animal we are so that we can design our world better, so that we can be our full potential. You know, we can be the great animals that we are. I got my start, you know, I'm an evolutionary biologist, but when I was trying to understand this, like what kind of animal we are, I thought, it must be, the secret must be in our big brains. Became a marine mammal observer. I was living in the Bering Sea on a fishing boat and studying these whales. And then I went for my doctorate in brain evolution. I was interested in cognitive evolution. But somewhere in there, I realized that I didn't think that the big brain was the thing. I found that it was a byproduct of our social structure. So I switched my doctorate and started working on social structure in these baboons in Ethiopia. And they're a lot like us in the way that they evolved at the same time period. They're very diverse, just like our human family used to be not so long ago. And they followed a lot of the same kinds of patterns. So very informative. And this middle one is the gelada, which, if you know about Dunbar's number, that was his inspiration. So I was asking, how does evolution actually happen in animals? Like, oops. This slide, I was gonna say, after that, I ended up in a biotech doing biotech research in corporate America. This slide is in there by mistake, but maybe not, because it was a lot like that. And in fact, what I noticed in that time was that I would see the same patterns in these leaders that I saw in the baboons. I'd been an entrepreneur in between for 12 years, but then I sold that business and I discovered biomimicry. I rediscovered my biological passion, which I had never lost. And I started writing this biomimicry manual. But really what inspired me was seeing these leaders act like baboons. And I started writing a column about that. So I've ended up working with a lot of companies in that time. And they're always, of course, very interested in how they can organize better, how their workforce can collaborate and innovate and be more resilient and agile. That's really the focus of their interest. How can nature's teams be, you know, help us be more agile and resilient, innovative, and thriving in this finite world? So I did write this book about that, and it sells more every month, bizarrely. And I did want to share that I do this kind of work with companies. I'd love to do this work with you. And I do have a course coming out, and I'd love to welcome you to that. So this is your teaming transformation. I'm actually writing another book. It's a workbook that goes with teaming. So it helps you put it to work in your endeavors. So it's all completely focused on you. So it's, how do these things apply to your work and what you're trying to do? This course is actually going to start, I changed the date. It's not August 4th. It is now September 15th. It's 6 weeks. And I think it's going to be super juicy, super, very unusual. I don't think there's anything else like this out there. But the point is to try to rehumanize our life and work so that we can adapt to change and we can thrive the way that we evolved to do, just like every other species. I did want to, because it's the solstice, so I wanted to offer this. This is on my Patreon, and I did a evolutionary meditation, and it's pretty long. So you can just chill out and be listening and thinking about how these deep patterns are inspiring you to greater things. I hope you enjoy that. So we've been talking all week about this superorganism pentad. So this is a deep pattern that all superorganisms share. I actually want to talk a little bit about the framework itself, because, in science, we don't typically do this. But what I found was that I was unable to describe the deep patterns through the scientific method, because when you do that, you're looking at it like almost as if you're in a lab looking at a system. So you have to analyze it. You take it apart and you basically kill it. It's like dissecting animals in biology class. So I'm trying to facilitate a living systems approach to living systems. And one way I found was this Regeneration Institute for Regenerative Practice uses these frameworks that they take a whole system and they kind of tease it out. So you can almost think of this as like a cat's cradle with the string game. Everything's connected. It's not parts. And really the takeaways, the juice is in the connections between these things. And that's true in our lives. It's all connections and process and movement. So I've redone this one. This is not the one that we've been looking at all week, because I tailored this for organizations. So we need a shared purpose to do this work. We work in teams, and the collective intelligence is the magical human sauce that releases this power. And we're looking for raw resources, but what we miss in our organizational life is this piece, this orange line, the regeneration, the co-creation, the co-evolution with other species. We've just completely severed that part. We don't even think about it because, let's be honest, all of this stuff comes from far away. It comes to us on a shipping container. So we're severed in our minds. And yet, this line is what renews our shared purpose. So if you don't have this, pretty soon none of this works. And so you end up in a position where you're having to tell everybody what to do. And it's a lot of work, a lot of effort, and it is degenerative. So this is this pattern that companies are primarily concerned with these functional parts of the pentad. And so it's my goal to not only help them do that better, but to see that the power that they've neglected, the potential on the table, comes from completing this circle and that orange line. So here's where we are at now, that, this is how we run our companies. We have a chief idea killer, and look, the manager of new growth ideas is vacant. And so, nature does use hierarchies, but they use it to prevent change. You're getting cancerous cells arising in your body all the time, but you have a hierarchical immune system that is weeding those out, hopefully. And that's how nature uses hierarchies, is to maintain, if it's not broke, don't fix it. And that's where hierarchies come in, to maintain those deep patterns. So, but how do nature's teams achieve these things? Its diversity is the raw feedstock of adaptive change. So these are water fleas, Daphnia water fleas. And they like to live in these little ephemeral pools. So when the rains come, and this is in my area in San Diego, we get these ephemeral winter rains, and then these little eggs hatch, and these water fleas go to work. And they're all female, they all are clones, and they just start eating as fast as they can. But pretty soon, the water heats up, the food declines, and the water actually just starts to dry up. And so they have to change. They have to adapt to change. So what do? They start producing males, and they start having sex. They start tapping into that diversity, increasing that diversity, anything they can try, experiments for the future. And so you get, these are two, nature's strategies. If it's not broke, make more as fast as you can. If you need to come up with something new, you need more diversity. And so these superorganisms, diversity is the most important thing for them, even though we think of these as like clone armies. And a queen, a virgin queen, is about to start a new colony. she'll go on this nuptial flight. So these are all the males and virgin queens from this whole area, different colonies, come together and fly in the air, and they mate. And a female, these are ants, she's going to need to breed with at least 6 males to have enough diversity to support the whole colony. If she can't get it, the colony is likely to fail. And there's some suspicion too that a lot of the honeybee colony collapse is due to this lack of diversity, and that we've domesticated these honeybees and we've bred out a lot of the diversity, same way we have with dogs. So for superorganisms, their structure is the strategy. You know, they're just always ready. There's these diverse individuals, they're ready, and they're seeking, they're looking, and they're sharing that diverse intelligence that they have. And that allows them to either be efficient in finding something or efficient in extracting it. So it's two strategies that they have: extraction and exploration. That allows them to make these small, imperfect decisions and constantly course correct. And so nobody has to be perfect. You just do your best your way. And when you come along and something needs to be done better and you can do it better, you do it better. And that's how they operate. So what if our organizations were more like slime molds without the slime? They would adapt to change quickly with no top-down oversight, and they would be resilient to unexpected risk. They innovate instantly, and they don't need any top-down direction. And they grow without restructuring. There's no meetings, no management, no annual reviews, no paperwork. Oh, to be a slime mold. So the structure is the strategy, and we're the same. We're superorganisms. And you know, if you've ever seen a high performance team, nobody's telling anybody what to do. They're communicating with each other. They know each other's strengths. They're like, I'm open. They're, you know, it's communication and intimate knowledge of one another and a shared purpose. Superorganisms rely on this collective intelligence, and it is actually a kind of a magical thing. You know, we've really kind of eroded that in our lives because we're always having to work for a paycheck, and it's what we're told to do, and we do it to feed our families. So, but there's 3 basic things that these superorganism teams require to achieve this. So they're operating in these networks of diverse and autonomous individuals. And in order to do that, they have to be bound by purpose, and they have to trust each other to be bound by that purpose. You've got to have diverse belonging. You know, I think we need you. You're special, and you're one of us. Those 3 things unlock a lot for us, and so rare that we get to be, you know, one, are you special? Most of our groups, we're not treated as special. 2, we're not treated as if we belong. I mean, I know going through school, you don't necessarily, a lot of people don't feel like they belong. So they're not special, they don't belong, and we don't need you. And so, of course, we've eroded all of our superorganism juice. And really the root of this is this sovereignty, this independence of thought and freedom of movement. And we kind of take it as, you know, a God-given right. That's what we say. It's a God-given right, which is interesting because other animals don't have that. But it's the foundation of our superorganisms. So it is, it's something. And then whenever this is eroded, you can see that that is a sign of parasitism. Foraging people maintain these commons fiercely. They're fiercely egalitarian, and that's a blanket statement, but that is a deep pattern. So trust is very important. Trust is critical to this. And then, so what that allows you to do, because of trust, they end up working in these modular team of teams, because you can't scale trust in these generic blobs. That's not how populations work. They work in these small teams, modular, flexibly linked, right-sized. And that's naturally resilient because of the trust, because of the shared purpose, all these things. So this is what organizations really need to facilitate. So what's really cool in these superorganisms is nobody's telling them what to do. They just wander around, they forage for work. And teams are recruiting each other, and, you know, nobody's got to tell them what to do because they share this purpose. And they work in these teams of teams. And I think this is interesting. So we've been talking a lot about parasitism as a driver for superorganism evolution. But here's what you see, they do this network team of teams, but this is what they do to prevent parasitism. So the teams, because of the team of teams, they can quarantine very easily without compromising their colony function. They do vaccinate, they lick each other. So it spreads out the virus, dilutes it, and spreads it among everyone. And it's the oldest ants that work outside in the most dangerous roles. And the queen and the nursery are the most, are deepest and safest, because that's, your shared purpose. You've got to keep that intact. That's your future. So I think this is very interesting for what our pandemic strategies. We did all this wrong. But we looky to the ants. The second thing is that they share a system of simple rules and these quorum sensing decision making. So they have a common language and common set of rules. So here you see, if you put these oats down, slime mold individuals, these are all diverse individuals, are searching. And then when they find, they recruit others, and then you get this collective intelligence. So it's combining that exploratory individual power with the efficient extraction of the group, so they can do it in the proper amount at the proper time. And they use these pheromone signals, these stigmergic signals. And I'm sharing this because a lot of organizations are using these ideas electronically, in our digital world, because we can leave signals, we can leave little footprints with our digital work. So maybe this will give you some ideas in your own work. They require this participatory arena for real-time information exchange. So the termite mound, the waggle dance floor, the ant trails, when you need that information, you can go there and get it. And it's always there. So it's like Slack channels for them. So here's the deep patterns that they share for collective intelligence. They're cultivating diverse and independent thought and action. Super important. They're self-organizing around shared purpose. They're all doing their own little experiments. So there's a lot of diverse experiments going on. And if something works better, then they'll double down on that. They've got these open, always on conversations, like the waggle dance floor, when they're choosing a new home, they facilitate these conversations. And then they use these simple if-then rules that trigger these tipping point decisions. Other thing that's interesting, and companies are using this, is that individuals leave seeds of ideas that attract other users to build on and modify it. And aardvark comes and destroys the mound, they have to rebuild it. But nobody tells them what to do. So one will stick a blob of sand here, and that triggers another one to stick another blob of sand next to it. And these things build. And then if there's a pattern of, 5 verticals, then they do an angle, and then it starts making arches. So these simple rules that build into these really complex emergent structures. And I think of, Wikipedia or things like that. Like, it requires our cultures to support it. So these guardrails that we were talking about. And right now we have little shared purpose. We just do what we're told. We have almost no place source cultural identity because we've migrated and been severed and been stolen from our lands and everything else. We don't have the mentors and the peers and the elders to see and develop our talents. We don't have that because we don't have this whole thing of, you're special, you belong, and we need you. There's no commons for us to grow our value together and protect it. We don't have any way to protect it. I mean, if you think of honeybees or hornets, if you mess with their territory, they're going to let you know. So what we don't have is these things. So this is Elinor Ostrom. I talked about this a bit yesterday, but she won the Nobel Prize for her work. And, we have the tragedy of the commons, right? Hardin in 1968, he said there was no mathematical hope for a commons because inevitably somebody will start building walls or take more than their share, and it'll degrade the commons for everyone. And he couldn't see any way out of it. tragedy of the commons. It's inevitable. This global climate doomed. The fisheries are doomed. A cheery guy. But if you look around the world, you see that humans share all the time. We have no problem sharing. And so what Elinor Ostrom said is that if in practice the theory isn't working, then the theory must be wrong. So she looked at what these successful organizations that successfully share commons, what were they doing? Lobster fisheries in Maine or forestry in Japan. And so what do? They define their boundaries very well, much like bees do, or honeybees or hornets. And the users agree to this set of rules. And those are generally member chosen and enforced. And then any who disagree are excluded from the resource. So you're welcome to disagree, but you can't use the resource. Usually, like in foraging communities, that usually takes the form of jokes. Like people go, "Hey, buddy, you taking more than your share again," you know, or whatever. And so it's a little light ribbing that kind of gets people like, "Oh, I'm getting a reputation for this. I better check myself." But that does increase to the point where you can be excommunicated from the community, and which is basically a death sentence. We're sensitive to each other in that way. You have to monitor the overall health of the resource. It has to be visible to everyone, so everyone can see, oh my God, the lobsters are getting smaller. We need to do something. And who's taking more? Each member's usage has to be visible. But you can't do this stuff on a giant scale. You have to have a small community where you can keep track of these things. So again, we've blasted it out to these generic Walmart, Facebook things. And so we've lost our ability to maintain these commons. And then the last one is that the sovereignty of this community has to be respected. You can't have the government coming in going, yeah, I know what you guys think, but we don't care. So that's critical. So those are, and I want to say that pro-social world is working on those ideas because we see them in humans, but they're exactly the same as what we see in other superorganisms. And so we can design systems that help us create those dynamics again. So pro-social is one that's doing that. That's pro-social world. And so check that out if you like. So how might we activate collective intelligence? I think more mentorship and development, seeing each other, that psychological safety is so critical. And just giving people the permission to just play, tinker, try things, and speak up, offer your odd little idea. Why not? And then sharing the costs and the benefits equally. So what the ants and bees do is they use this distributed leadership to maintain these commons. Like sometimes there's honeybees, they're sterile workers, but they produce these fertile eggs every now and then. That's considered cheating on the social contract because an individual bee is taking more reproductive success than everyone is receiving. Other bees are coming along and removing those rogue eggs. So that's this distributed leadership that individuals are collectively enforcing these things in little bits everywhere. So 1/3 of the bees and ants lead despite giving no orders. And what we mean by that is that they travel in these little trios. This is a very general pattern. And so 2 of them will work very hard right there. And one tends to wander more. And so they'll come in contact with other trios. And so it kind of links this into a team of teams in that way. But we call that the wanderer, the leader. That individual is sort of spreading the social unity and sharing the purpose and sharing those deep patterns. And so our own leaders can do that too. I think growing and protecting unique potential and taking the effort to see it in individuals and say, hey, I see this amazing thing in you. You should develop that. What can I do to help you for us collectively? And all the diversity, it's not because these people are not getting a fair shake. It's we are collectively losing the intelligence by them not being at the table. More women to the table, more everybody to the table, so that we have greater collective intelligence. And those leaders are also, they need to pull up that strength and clarity of purpose, and then maintain these spaces where we can help and share without getting taken advantage of. So here we've dealt with this swarm creativity, collective intelligence, functional, very functional layer. And, really they're trying to get these resources, particulate resources. That's very functional. That's what the companies are interested in. But you cannot get this shared purpose and trust that you need without dealing with the symbiotic upcycling. You have to take care of the territory, the other residents of the territory, which are other species. That's the source of the raw resources. So these two things have to become linked. Otherwise, this runs out. And then this runs out. And then the shared identity suffers. Then you have no more collective intelligence. And the whole thing, we might as well be slaves. In fact, that's what the parasites want. So that's what they do. These parasites come in and they take over the queen and they produce their own offspring, but the host labor is taking care of them. So now we're no longer choosing our own jobs and enhancing the colony. We're just working for this parasite. And so the raw resources go to the parasite. The collective intelligence disappears because, we're not sharing this purpose anymore. We're just doing what we're told. And our individuality doesn't matter anymore. Just do what you're told. And so the waste accumulates because we're not replenishing those relationships that actually produce the raw resources. So the parasite doesn't care. They're just going to jet, they just go on to the next colony. But this orange line between the symbiotic upcycling and the shared identity is what keeps us going. That's the renewal of our societies and everything that brings us goodness. And that's been totally ignored by our institutions or our companies, and to the point where we don't even think of it. It's like we better do that because that's a good thing to do. But no sense of our functionality depends on it. It's that shared purpose, and it's local, and it's for our people. So we need to get those structures back. Otherwise, we're disengaged, unhealthy, purposeless, and unseen. So what's the answer? Well, I just see so many things like preconceptions that prevent us from our potential, just inability to see clearly, just so many layers. So that's actually a project that I want to develop is looking at people's preconceptions. I see kids are afraid of being outside sometimes, afraid of snakes or afraid of the unknown or what have you. And it's a lack of familiarity. So I'd like to increase that. I'd like to increase curiosity and play and just, self-discovery. And then I think most important is these plural perspectives, just seeing through other eyes and considering other beings. And so these are the things, the deep, skills that I think we need to bring back. And these are what leaders can be facilitating for us. And I think the most critical thing is imagination, to even believe that something else is possible. And the more you experience the world, the greater your imagination. And to me personally, and I don't know if this is a thing, but for me, my imagination comes from other animals, other organisms, and seeing through their eyes and imagining the world through their eyes. And that's what gives me the consideration and curiosity for their lives. And that's what makes my world bigger. So I hope we can facilitate this. And then just intimate experience with our neighbors of all species, our relatives. The more we know them, the more we can grow our conditions conducive to life together. I do think it's in the water. I think we need to organize around watersheds, these little communities. That's how they came about. And all the fragments of stories and songs and things that unite us as a people, they came from watersheds. They came from places. And right now I've been talking about springs that like emerge from the earth itself. It's so beautiful. Then I want to introduce to you, this is our Borrego Institute for Living Design. And this is where we're trying to do all these things, awaken curiosity and teach tracking, facilitate creative co-creation. We talked about co-creation yesterday with other species. So we have Grammy award-winning singer came and did a video singing with the birds. It was amazing. He had a guy playing a cactus, and he actually mapped all the notes on the cactus, and he actually played a symphony on it. It's pretty crazy. Things like that. So to reawaken this art in our lives, I think that's really important. It reawakens our minds. And I want to welcome you all. If any of you want to write a book or learn something new or work on a creative project, please come to the build, and we'd love to support you in that. And I tell you, it will awaken your creative output, no question. It's an amazing place. So how might we rehumanize our way of life and grow thriving places that feed us again? Coevolution, man. Coevolution for the win, Eric. You got me on fire with that yesterday. Yeah. And surf for free on life's generosity with us. So I want to invite you to check out geoversity.org. We do the Borrego Institute there, and lots of cool stuff over there. And then Team Lab is my organization. Would anyone else like to say something? We do this, so we do the pro-social thing, and it's amazing for growing these commons, but it doesn't take into account what our goals are, what our shared purpose is. So that's why I think that the Regenesis practice is so amazing, because it is all about that. It's all about, how do you find those common goals? Where do you find that overlap? And another thing I see is, for myself, maybe I've done it all wrong. That's why I study teaming, because I can't figure it out. Not true. But you really just need one person that shares your goal. And then you need a third person that is more of a recruiter and a sharer, more outward. And then you've got your trio with your leader, your wandering leader. And then these units start coming together and building up. But finding the purpose, there's a whole process for that. And I think that we've kind of swept it under the rug, because, and even when I work with these companies, I'll always lead with, you got to have self-organizing shared purpose. These seeds of purpose have to come from ideas. And they go, well, yeah, that's cool, but we already have these jobs that we want them to do. That's the reality we're dealing with. So I think it comes to, at some point, companies are going to realize that we can't pay all these managers to manage us. It's astronomical. And yet, if you could easily get rid of them all if your shared purpose was strong enough. And God knows we got a shared purpose strong enough, because we all got to live on this planet together. There's been a lot of propaganda paved over our human minds, and I think it's jackhammering it up.
That's a nice way of putting it. Yeah, self-organizing around a shared purpose. I feel like that's what very clearly is what's been going on, that has brought together the members of the Universal Foundation for Holistic Design, of which Eli has been one of the founding members of. So I'd encourage everyone to join in on that conversation. He's brilliant. This is something that comes from being rooted in a space, which is, the aspect of the indigenous mind, but also where your symbiotic upcycling is brilliant in terms of putting it in that relationship, because the shared identity of the symbionts comes from having a mindset and an understanding that we live in an intelligent world that is consciousness that is at the center. Space and time are relevant to that as indexing systems for our experiences, and for how that energy that's moving within those experiences is fundamental to what creates that consciousness and moves it, is constantly spiraling all over the place. And that's the energy, that the movement of that energy is what creates the time, and the unfolding of that is also the space that we are in. And we also have to eradicate that notion of the three-axis system of space. Space is present space, inner space, and outer space, but that's all relevant to our own positioning.
Mhm.
And then when you have that understanding, the dialogue opens up to the species all around. And I feel that's like something that I know that's what, like, for example, the Druids were doing with their groves of trees, and the magnificent intelligence that the older trees bring in is added to the magnificent intelligence that we humans bring in when we work in a co-creative space. And that notion of domination over is completely, hijacked, because it isn't domination. It's there's a dominion that we have, and that dominion is inclusive with everyone. It's not exclusive to our purpose or for our pleasure.
Yeah, beautifully said. Very profound. This is something I've been thinking about. We say that the universe is conscient, it's sentient and conscious. And so, I'm looking at that, and what I see is that, yes, it is, but the more structured that it becomes, the more intentional and intelligent that consciousness becomes. Superorganisms have this very intelligent signature of design, whereas regular organisms, are intelligent and doing all the things, but not in that, you don't see that signature. And then relative to the earth, to inert things, living things are more structured. So they have more intentionality and more consciousness. But that consciousness is all there throughout everything. It's just amount of structure that enables it to focus.
And also the belief structure that we create, or that gets imposed upon us ultimately as we come in, sort of like open to all possibilities, it gets cordoned off. And so it is necessary to start unveiling and dismantling, as you say, and taking that off, because as you unlimit yourself, then your structure opens up to the communication possibilities that otherwise you say, well, that's not possible. And
well,
then
yeah.
it's where the magic just starts happening. And wow.
Yes, that's going back to Kate. People say, oh, you're a dreamer. Well, I'm a dreamer too, but we had this already. We have this in us. It's not a dream. We've been parasitized. It's our birthright.
Dunbar's number, because I feel like what happens when we look at, again, our brain that's suited for politics and 150 relations, but then we introduce the internet. And I say, well, even, maybe I have 5,000 friends on Facebook and I probably don't know all of them, but right, the idea becomes less of, do I know those people, versus the descriptions and the memes and the info that they're putting out. There's a likeness there. There's an alignment there. So it becomes an alignment with those specific memes that creates the culture that we're putting forward. So I would argue that, again, even going to that far out point of tapping into the collective intelligence of the universe, which is there, right? How can you look at all of these animals and all of these systems and then say, oh, it's not true at the bigger level, right? Somehow it's only true at the smaller level. There's just this inelegant big bang, and then all of this just came into exquisite position. But, tapping into that, being guided by that, however we want to put that, allows for a type of collective intelligence that actually can regenerate the earth. And I think that's the name of the game.
Amen. Harry.
Hi, I'd like to chime in with the notion of your exquisite subtle warrior in how the beginning of your presentation presented us with all the logos regarding the canopy of economics that you've been relating to, and how you are taking your voice and this presentation to them. How are they receiving it?
Oh, well, they love it, because they're in a position of knowing that what they're doing isn't working. And so they know they need radical ideas, but at the same time, they're unwilling to impose morality on it, because it's all about, extracting the numbers. So they like science. So they love me I can go blah, 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 blah. Then they go, is there an algorithm for this? I go, oh yes, definitely there's an algorithm. And first, let me tell you about this part of it. But yeah, no, they want it because they see the clarity and they see that it's a system, and they can see that they can't get to where they want to go with what they have. And they are also frustrated because as these companies become bigger and bigger and bigger, the amount they have to pay the managers becomes astronomical. And here we're entering a recession, possibly. That's the first thing they're going to do is like, how do we downscale? So as sad as that is, I think this idea is going to take off more and more because they're like, oh, we can get rid of a third of our workforce. But the flip side of that is that we have to focus on shared purpose and replenishing our symbionts in order to do it. Biomimicry too, it grabs their imagination, but it ties it to things that they can pay for, like innovation, or so they love that. And then it opens their mind to other possibilities. So I think that's an easy entry point for them. Yeah. And you know what, we've basically outsourced that orange line. We just go, oh, well, isn't the Sierra Institute taking care of that? Did I give them a $15 donation every year? I did that. You know, but it has to be integrated in our lives. This is your, you know, this is your food. This is what your children are going to be eating. Yeah. All right, 11:02. This was really fun. Thank you all for coming again. I really appreciate it. Check out all my stuff, see what you like, and hopefully we're gonna accomplish this build, raising the build this month. You know, just shoot me an email if you feel if something comes up. Dr. Tamsin at drtamsin.com. I'm very accessible. I enjoy your messages, and check out the guided meditation because it's awesome. And that is a community focus, and like that's how shared purpose grows. And then when crisis hits, that's where, you know, we have our own food. We are self-sufficient. We can take care of each other. When the SHIT hits the fan, we're gonna want that. All right, adios, and have a wonderful week.